And I can prophesy that your grandchildren in America will live under socialism. And please don't be afraid of that. Your grandchildren will not understand how their grandparents did not understand the progressive nature of a socialist society.
There were many voices in America calling out Joe McCarthy for being so loud, calling out communists in our government. They criticized him heavily and they came up with McCarthyism. They really tainted his name. Were they fair for doing that? Nikita Khrushchev, he claimed that socialism would be the way of life in American society one day. Now, for those who don't know, you're not sure, socialism and communism are very much related.
Third grade students are being sworn into the Communist Young Pioneer Organization. The children take the oath and answer to the question, quote, "Are you prepared to give us your entire strength to work toward the noble goal of communism?"
Mr. Khrushchev, you talk about competition economically, and yet you seem not to want to allow competition of ideas. You make the decision instead of allowing the people to decide what they will hear.
Khrushchev, like Stalin, was ideologically communist, but conveniently chalked the failures of communism up to a deceased Stalin, thus implying that in his more Trotskyian strategy, socialism and communism will reach its fullest potential.
And I can prophesy that your grandchildren in America will live under socialism. And please don't be afraid of that. Your grandchildren will not understand how their grandparents did not understand the progressive nature of a socialist society.
Although their win in the court of public opinion, and thus the distraction away from their connections in government, placed the communists on decent footing by the mid-50s, the reality is that the close call of the so-called McCarthy era, in tandem with the death of Joseph Stalin, signaled to the communists that they needed to regroup.
The tactics of the party had to change.
Up until that point, they operated mostly on the radical fringes. They needed now to appeal to a larger audience, conceal their communist branding, come off as champions of democracy.
Now, I went to Google and I asked the question, did Nikita Khrushchev claim that socialism would one day be a part of American society or even take over American society? And this is what it says. It actually said no. Nikita Khrushchev never claimed that socialism would become the way of American society, which is false because we just saw it right here in the video. So you can't take everything at face value that comes from Google. There is a lot of truth in there, but there's also a mixture of lies. But you have to be able to discern between the two, right? So you got to do your own research as well. Now, it also says, instead, he famously predicted that communism would eventually outlast and replace capitalism on a global scale, specifically telling capitalists in the West, "We will bury you." This infamous 1956 quote was frequently misconstrued in the US as a literal violent threat of a Soviet invasion or a plan to subvert the American system. Now, one thing you have to know about communism and socialism are related. But one thing you have to understand is there is a society called the Fabian Society that actually has a strategy of how to be, should I say, subversive and really push communism into the way of life in any society. So check this next part out. It says, Khrushchev later clarified that he did not mean physical destruction or an imminent military takeover of the US. Rather, he meant that socialism and communism would naturally supplant capitalism through historical development and peaceful economic competition. So one thing you got to keep in mind, I mean, this is something that's done by the energy and power of human beings. So there were people from Russia who interacted with people from the US or any other country, and they worked at, it's like a virus. They worked at putting these ideals in the minds of people who also helped to spread these ideals. The thing to look out for and to be aware of is who are the people, and you can tell them by their fruits, but who are the people who have these ideas or ideals of socialism and communism. So you got to really pay attention to that.